Hi, I'm Josh Ahmed, Park Industries Customer Service Department. On this video, we are going to show you how to rebuild the on-off valve on your cutting head. So this will work. It's the same setup for Saberjet, Saberjet XPs, Javelins, and Fusions here. Depending on the Fusion, if yours is a little older model, you might have a little bit different setup. Concept should be generally the same. Reasons you need to rebuild your on-off valve is if you have water dripping out of your nozzle all the time when you have pressure built up. You could have where the water jet stays on in between cuts when it's driving from one cut to the other and it stays on, or if it does not turn on. Another scenario would be wet garnet. There's multiple other things that cause wet garnet also, but a bad needle in there will cause your garnet to get wet. So we do have a video on wet garnet there on what to all look for that also. First thing we want to do on the Saberjet, come down with your nozzle to give you clearance from your laser here. How this works is inside the valve body in here, there is a needle and a seat inside there, and that's what seals off your high pressure. So this accu valve here has a spring in it that is constantly pushing down onto that needle to seal that off. When your machine calls for the nozzle to be open, air is applied to this line and that overcomes the spring, and that will push the spring up and allow the needle to move up and the water to flow down through your seat and out your nozzle there. So if you are having issues with it leaking and stuff, you can double check your line. We'll just pull our line off here and making sure we have no air when our nozzle is off, and when our nozzle is called to be turned on, that we have air pressure. You do only want about 80 to 90 psi going on here. You don't want a full 120 shop air going to this. So to start here, we'll disconnect our air line. Tuck that back out of the way, and I'm going to disconnect my garnet and pull my bottom half of my cutting head off of here. Now I'm going to start here and disconnect it from the swivel. So on this bottom half, I'm going to use a wrench and hold that still. Don't move this bottom wrench. We only want to turn the swivel part. That's extremely important when we get to the reassembly process here. So this is the swivel adapter here. You can see the nut here turns, but it has a stationary bottom there. And inside our head here is our orifice. And if you let this bottom part turn, and that will scar up your orifice, because your orifice will turn on the bottom of that swivel adapter. So we'll set this to the side here for now. And you notice that my nozzle raised up when I took that off. That's because my nozzle broke prox, triggered an alarm, and that caused it to shut the system off, which raised it back up. So I'm just going to take a socket. And you can see the socket makes the light turn on here. And I'm just going to put a socket on. You can use a washer, a coin, tape anything to it, whatever you want. We also do have a bypass for the nozzle broke prox on our website if you want to just use a paper clip and bypass it that way. So then I'm just going to come down, back down with my nozzle. Jet setup enable, and down with my nozzle here. And we're going to disconnect our high pressure line. We'll just swing that out of our way. And now we're gonna take our adapter out, and this will loosen up the rest of the cutting head assembly here. I want to be careful when I'm taking this out. There's a bullet in there, and that pushes up against the valve body. And also if you are running a thimble filter, we don't want to lose that. So you can see my bullet assembly came out with my adapter. I'm just going to try and grip on here. So there's my bullet and my adapter here. And if you are running a thimble filter, there'll be a thimble filter inside your bullet hole here. We'll just set that to the side. And then we can just wiggle our little body here a little bit. Depending on how long yours has been on, it might come off a little bit harder. If you have a lot of stuff in there, you can take some compressed air and blow some of the junk out of that hole there. Now we have our cutting head assembly, so we have our AccuValve, our valve body, and our swivel adapter here. Now we'll bring this to a workbench and pull this apart and show you how to rebuild the on-off valve that's inside that valve body. Okay, now we're back at our workbench here, and we have our assembly. You can see how dirty this assembly is. I'm going to take a Scotch-Brite pad and clean up some of this before I start tearing this apart to try keeping the debris from getting into the assembly here. So we'll clean this up quick. Okay, so now that we're fairly cleaned up here and have a clean workbench, we're gonna start by, I just wanna point out this. So this is my adapter and this is my bullet that seats up against here. So this would push, the adapter pushes the bullet into the valve body. This is where this bullet seats into the valve body. That needs to seat in there perfectly centered. So we'll go through it here when we put it back together, but make sure that you're moving it around and getting that perfectly centered. If you push that in and it pushes in at an angle and is not centered, you will not get that to seal off, and you will have to replace your valve body and our bullet here. I also wanted to show a little closer here the thimble filter. So the thimble filter is right here, and I'm just going to lightly grab it with a pick and plop it out here. So that came from inside that center hole. So that's what it'll look like if you do not have a thimble filter there. This is the small filter to catch the debris from going through the orifice. And that will catch any debris that's in your high pressure lines from shooting through your orifice and blowing your orifice. We do recommend that if you're running a diamond orifice, you are running this thimble filter. You can run it even with ruby orifices if you want, but for surely with the diamond, because we don't want you to have to go through a lot of diamond orifices. We're just going to set this to the side for right now. And let's tear apart this cutting head here. So I'm going to start by taking my swivel adapter off here. Pulling that out slowly. And this is my seat that the needle seats off onto. I'm gonna grab a rag, just wipe that off, clean that up so you can see it a little better. There's some really stuck on blue goop on there, so I'm just going to my seat, clean up all my parts nicely here. Brake cleaner does work fairly well to get off the really stuck on blue goop. And the seat, so here's what our seat looks like. I'm not going to bother cleaning that up because we are going to be replacing that in this kit. Now we'll pull off the valve body from the AccuValve. Take a look at the AccuValve. You can see here the silver plunger in the center is the plunger that actually pushes down on the needle. The brass part does not move. So if you want, you can hook this up to air if you are having AccuValve problems here, and make sure that that plunger is moving. When you apply air to it, that plunger should suck back down in. Doesn't move a lot, only about an 1/8 inch or so, but that will suck back in, so you can do that. If it is having issues here or it doesn't feel like it's responding quickly, your breather, also take your breather off and just try it then. Your breather might be just plugged and you don't need to actually replace the whole AccuValve. So set that to the side and we will go through our on-off valve. You can see the needle bearing guide inside there. Wipe off some blue goop here quick. And I'm just going to use my wooden dowel to push everything back through here. So I'm on the needle side now here, and I'm just pushing on the tip of the needle and everything will come out. Try and get this out. So this is what a bare valve body looks like then. If you order a valve body, this is how it will come, and you'll have to put the on-off valve inside it. Here, if we dissect this, this is our seal. So remember how this came apart was like this. So our red seal was to the bottom side of the valve body. Then we have our needle. The needle, the tip is going to be towards the bottom side also. It has a sharp tip on one side and more of a blunt end on the other. The tip is towards the bottom, so it would sit like this if it was in the machine. And this seat would sit like this with the red part down. And needle bearings are that you can go either way with them. They are not directional anymore. So I'm just going to use a little bit of Scotch-Brite here again to clean up everything real nice inside here. I'm just going to use a little bit of compressed air to blow out any dust or dirt that might be stuck in it. So this is what the on-off valve kit consists of. Here's the AccuStream kit number here, and it'll come with a needle, your needle guide, or the seal, and then the seat here. And then high pressure grease and your wooden dowel to push everything out and to seat it back into it. I'm going to start by taking my swivel adapter and a little bit of blue goop here. You can use a brush or a Q-tip, whatever you want here. but I'm just going to put a thin layer of the blue goop, trying not to get globs into my swivel adapter here. We will take our seat then, and if you want, you can put it on the seat, and we'll mate them two together. And I'm going to take just a little bit more and put a very thin layer on the top side also. I'm going to go thinner on all my flat areas here. And then I'm going to put it a little thicker on my threads. Once you get that done, we're going to thread our swivel adapter back up onto there, keeping that straight vertical so that your seat does not fall off. And then we can take our wrenches and snug that tight. Okay, now that we have our swivel onto our bell body, our seats in there, I assembled our needle guide, our seat, and our needle here. So keep in mind, needle, the pointed end is right here, and the red goes towards the pointed end. And the pointed end will go down in here. Needle guide is non-directional. So we're going to, this is how it sits in our cutting head. So we're going to slide all that down. And we're going to just take our wooden dowel, and what I'm going to do is just slowly push on the needle guide, keeping everything nice and flat, and push that down until it seats. If you use the wooden dowel and just push that all the way down into there, the seat into there first, your seat will get pushed in front of this your hole where your water enters in on, where the high pressure bullet seats into, and that'll cause issues there. So that's why we assemble that way. And now we will finish the rest of it here. Take our blue goop first, get some of that on our threads. And we can start threading this on, but we cannot tighten this up. So I'm just gonna spin it on like 2 threads just to make sure it holds on there. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna utilize the machine. You need air applied to this accu valve before you tighten this up tight onto the valve body here. You can use your shop air if you have air line that will fit on here. Just make sure that shop air is regulated down to 80 to 90 psi so that you don't blow the seals inside your accu valve. We're going to utilize the machine and show you how to do this on the machine here. Okay, now that we're back to our machine, remember I do not have my accu valve tight onto my valve body here. My swivel adapter is tight though. We tighten that up right away before we put our needle in. So what we're going to do here is just slide our assembly down. And I did clean up this assembly. If you have a lot of mud in between there, make sure you clean that up so when we push that in, we don't have mud going into our hole here that needs to seat onto. Now I'm just going to take my adapter with my bullet, and I just have, you can see a skim layer of the blue goop on there. You don't want too much blue goop on there. And I'm just going to, now on the Saberjets and stuff, it has where it'll stop, it won't fall all the way down. Some of the older Fusions, they would, but I'm just gonna let that rest there. We're going to thread in our adapter, but even if you have the stop there, make sure, this is very important, make sure you move your, once I feel that move a little bit, I'm going to move this up and down and turn it side to side. Now you'll have to turn the swivel adapter because my valve or my accu valve is not tight. So we're gonna go up and down, side to side, and we are gonna slowly thread this in, and we need to make sure we're going nice and centered into there. If you tighten that up too tight when you are not centered, that will not seal off at all. Once you're confident that that is nice and centered, we can take our wrench and snug that up. If you want to be sure, 40 foot-pounds is torque value on that, what is suggested for that. So now that we have that all snug, now I'm going to connect my air line. We're going to apply air to this accu valve. And actually, we're going to pause here for a second. I want to show you that accu valve while we're here. So we're going to show you how to test your accu valve, and we will need air applied onto it when we tighten it up on here. So to do this, you need your arbor enabled, so your key cannot be on disabled, and nozzle needs to be down, and you also need to be so far back on your table. You can't have your nozzle past the table and activate this. So we have our nozzle down and everything. Now we'll get this up to the camera, and hopefully you guys can see this here, and we will open up that nozzle and you'll see that plunger move in. So it moves in there, you can see about 1/8 of an inch. So we just want to make sure that that is moving. If it's not, your air from your line is going on and off, then check your breather on the end here, take that off and see if that helps. If it's still not working, you're having internal issues here. Okay, now that we do have air applied, I can see my plunger is sucked up in, so we can fully thread on and tighten this. Now, you can put a wrench on there. I do suggest holding the bottom of the valve body also, so we're not torquing on that bullet. So holding that tight. Tighten up that accu valve. And then now we can put our bottom part of our cutting head on here. I'm going to take off our bypass on the nozzle broke, so our system will shut off now and it will raise up. And now making sure, so there's a thin layer of the blue goop, very thin, on the bottom of the swivel adapter. There's a thin layer on the bottom of the orifice, very thin, not too thick there. And we're going to thread this up on, making sure the bottom half I'm holding still. I'm only turning the top nut on the swivel adapter itself here. Also taking note before you tighten up which way your garnet came in, and you can also reference your plate here, making sure your flat side of your plate is straight towards the front. And now we will just hold the bottom half for head assembly here, and we're going to tighten up our swivel. Remember, only turning the top wrench here. Once you have that on, we can put in our fitting for our garnet line. Connect our garnet line right away, and then we can bring our high pressure line down. And we can connect our high pressure line. making sure 3 threads exposed on the high pressure line between the collar and the taper there. Tighten up our high pressure line, and now our valve body is rebuilt. Now we can test it to make sure it's working from our pump screen here. As always, if you have any questions, please give our customer service department a call. We'd be glad to help. Thank you.